All right, troops. Ray, my friend, an absolute pleasure to have you on. You're the first guest of the final season of That Mental Ginger Show. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing not bad, apart from a little cough that's not going away, but I've had a little power nap before I came on, so I'd be in good energy for the show. So
Good. The way I was able to get my energy up was being sick in Tesco toilet. There's always a
we all
fun
have
way to
our
It's always a fun way to do it. And I didn't realize that would be the tradition for this final season, but it looks like I might have to go. Alison, can you keep giving me those expired med pills so I can just keep throwing up before I get my energy going? I couldn't go cold water dipping today.
all right. Just have a little subscription for the local Tesco.
Yes.
Yeah. Can I get a
Is
3 week subscription for your until the meds run out?
Yeah, specifically the one in the far right, depending on how well this one goes.
Okay.
But having to go to the customer care and apologize for that and say I've cleaned as much as I
Uh,
can, but there was no wee scrubby brush for me to finish.
nah.
So any help would be great. So the second I heard that, cleaner to toilet, or I was like, oh no. Well,
Yep.
let's go, let's run. But anyway, enough about
Yep.
me and my shenanigans. We're here to talk about you and learn about you, your origin story, if it were, because the one thing we all have in common is that we all have an origins. So Ray, for my followers, please tell us your origin story.
Okay. I'd love to say I grew up in a Pokemon ball and I blossomed into a no, that's a
We'll start with
no,
the
that's not my
basics. We'll start with the basics.
no.
Where were you born?
I was born in Dundee of all places.
Ah,
Born there in 1982.
hmm,
Grew up there, was educated there. Spent the first 29 years of my life in Dundee.
hmm,
Then moved to Edinburgh in 2011. Um, was It was just lucky that I had a friend living in Edinburgh who was moving out of their house. I moved into his old house. So um, yeah, I was able to get good accommodation in
So
Edinburgh. I've been here ever since.
why did you move to Edinburgh from Dundee?
Mainly because there was a bigger comedy circuit in Edinburgh, and plus I kind of had enough of Dundee, and I'd
Hmm,
been visiting Edinburgh for like a few weeks before that, and I was starting to fall in love with the place. So I thought, yeah, I want to move here.
hmm. So what did your love of comedy begin?
Um, I mean, I guess from a very young age, from age of about 6 or 7,
Hmm,
um, I got like I got a joke book for Christmas one year and loved all the jokes, and then I started writing my own joke books. And I got to the stage where I had like such a huge joke book. I say, "Oh, can I tell some to the class one day?" And teacher
yeah.
said, "Hey, all right." So that was kind of my first foray into stand up, if
Wow.
you like.
So how old were you when you
Um,
did your first kind of joke book to the class?
oh, probably about 9 or 10.
Wow.
Yeah, it would have been about primary 5. So yeah, nine or
It's
ten.
so a minimum of 30 years you have been plying your comedy trade then, if you start from there.
Yeah,
Which
although there
is
was a big,
Yeah, there'll be gaps in between, but that's where the initial love started, and it's kind of it's
yeah.
been there since. And yeah, one thing I always like to hear about when it comes to comedians, I like to hear about their process, how they come up with their jokes, like what's the things that they do. And so I'm going to ask you the same question that I've asked quite a few comedians that have been on. What is your process when you find something? Is it just something that you see and you go, "That's bugged me," write it down, or you pick apart a situation, or you're an observational comedian? The floor is yours, my friend.
To be honest, there's a bit of everything. I have days when I can get a notebook, write down loads of ideas, and then think, oh, I can get a joke out of them
Mm,
eventually. So um, what I tend to find, this could be because of undiagnosed ADHD, that I often find I get a lot of like sharp bursts of inspiration about 2 or 3 hours before I go on stage.
mm,
When I'm just because I have a tendency to be a bit last minute writing my set down.
right.
So what I'll do is like about an hour or two before I'll start writing the set, and then loads of joke ideas will come in there. So
Yeah.
I know here it's sensible to go up like when I've got a bit of free time, write joke. But honestly, some of my better ideas come like a few minutes before going on
Mm.
stage.
Do you think maybe that's around the fact that you're around fellow comedians, like, and there's an energy there? You know, I'm not like you guys in terms of comedy. Like, you know, I'm at this stage. I'm at 5 minute set. I could probably do 10. Like, I could keep going as well, but I always find when I come up with ideas that somehow land is when I'm at a gig and I'm watching like fellow comedians, and we have that kind of there's that kind of synergy going on, like the vibe of the room, like the kind of buzz that's going on where they're all kind of looking over their notes and things, and it just starts to flow from there. Do you think there's like maybe it's a collaborative thing or just the adrenaline?
I think a bit of both. Yeah, most for me, mostly the adrenaline. But yeah, when you're in a space surrounded by other comedians, often you can sometimes bounce ideas off each other.
Mm,
Um, um, uh, um, Sometimes I still like have little groups that I go do writing with, and we just bounce ideas off each other. And I
mm,
think it's good to get other comedians in because they know what they're doing, but
mm,
um, they also can give you help as they like, oh, this joke works, but have you thought about adding this bit or this bit doesn't work? Maybe try
mm.
fleshing it out or
Yeah.
sometimes I'll certainly when I'm writing new jokes, I've often find that there's a big build up to a not very big punchline, so I've got to try and fill bits in between.
Mm. Well, one of the things that does make you like more unique in the comedy circuit, from what I've seen, is your improv comedy shows.
Yeah,
Sadly, I was unable to be a part of it this year due to my own mental health struggles at the time. But I'd heard great reviews about them like beforehand, through a mutual
yeah,
acquaintance, Christopher John Stephen. Like,
hmm
obviously, and you also both did the Eurovision contests
yeah.
on the Ouija Warriors, which we will touch back on in a minute. But I want to hear about how the improv group came to be. Like, you know, I have a rough idea of maybe what the inspirations were, but for my audience, I would like to know how it came about and what inspired you to do it.
That started off. Um, what one of the writing groups I was doing, we were doing like an online writing group during the pandemic, like especially in the early days.
Mm,
Um, and I think at some point someone suggested, "Oh, why not try like an improv workshop?"
yeah.
And then I know Chris Stephen was part of that writing group,
Mm,
and he's got a lot of experience with improv. So he was one of the ones that suggested it, and then just kind of grew from there. And then it's one of those things I realized like once I get a bit of practice with it, I'm actually not that bad at it.
yeah. One thing I learned from Christopher John Stephen was that when he started using my name in some of his comedic skits, that I thought I must be doing something right. I remember one, and it was an improv thing that he'd done with was it Ewan McPherson?
Oh yeah,
One of the times, and John Carruthers, and I'd been on beforehand and done a wee five and came off, and he went on to say like I'm John Carruthers, or as you might know me, Andrew Durning's evil twin, and I was
okay.
like, okay. Do I take that as shots fired, or do I take that as a compliment that I've clearly done something right here? But now that I know Christopher the way I do, yeah, it was probably about both. So when was your very first improv show?
The first online one was probably mid to late 2020.
Hmm?
I think I must have started at about about sort of I think it was about September, October time when nights were getting in and felt like we needed something to occupy the nights during the like what was coming up to the second lockdown. So
Yeah,
it was good because it kept my comedy brain working because obviously we were lacking a lot of gigs
yeah,
during that time.
yeah. That was where I kind of
So
started as well. Like coming back to comedy was in the lockdown ones. It was this very tail end, and it was something that I thought about because people had said, "You're funny, you should do comedy," and me stupidly went, "Yes." Well, I'm like
yeah,
that. Well, I know that I'm witty and clever in conversation, but going up and trying to make someone actually laugh is a whole different ballgame, as people in the comedy circuit know. But the reason I love the
Yep.
Zoom ones because when I bombed, which was fairly routine, I would just fake a screen freeze and then log off.
Yeah. That was
Like,
the only time you'd get away with that.
yeah, after the seventh or eighth time, they just realized I wasn't funny.
Uh,
But by that point, but yeah, but I've obviously been a part of one of the online shows, like, and I really loved them. Like, I loved the kind of
yep.
synergy that was there. Like, I loved the
Yeah.
different segments and sections. Like, so,
Yep.
what was kind of the inspiration around the way you structure the improv sessions? Like, was it from guys like, like Whose Line's This Anyway, or Mock the Week, or what? I mean, those are just my musings. I could be entirely wrong.
Yep.
That's why I want to hear from the Ray's mouth, because I'm not going to call you a
Yep.
horse. That's an insult.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I also do impressions. Um, but no, yeah, I think Whose Line Is It Anyway was one of the big inspirations because um we took some of the game ideas from there. Um and obviously it's been a long running show. Um Especially in America. I think they're on their 30th season now.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something, yeah. And I still get clips of it on like when I'm sort of scrolling through Instagram, just like bored. I get like
Hmm.
clips of like the more modern Who's Line and it's good to see Ryan Stiles and Colin Mockery still going.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um
definitely.
so they're obviously not running out of steam, which is a good thing.
Mm,
Because they made those early shows.
yeah. Well, definitely. And what again with kind of the British style of humor as well can translate to an improv show in ways that I never thought as well until also watching Mock the Week and things like that. Was Mock the Week like a thing for you? Did you like that, or were you more stick with Whose Line Is It Anyway? Or
No, Whose Line is sorry, yeah, Whose Line was the main inspiration, but yeah, we had a couple of some inspirations from Mock the Week as well.
mm,
Because that was another show that got me through a lot of lockdown.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, I was really sad when it got axed, and
yeah.
Dave still hasn't picked it up. But anyway, so I'm
Eh,
diverging here.
no, you think about how long it took them to pick up Red Dwarf
Well, yeah,
as
so
well. So where there is
yeah,
life, there is hope, my friend, and comedy will always be
absolutely,
around.
yeah,
And if I can
yeah,
ever get the chance to get Giggles and Guffaws back up and running again, I will definitely be doing that. And getting that sorted too. And speaking of
fantastic.
obviously content that is of the ginger media variety, you and Christopher John Stephen very graciously did a Eurovision special on the Ouija
Yeah,
Warriors. And
yes.
what I know is, how did your love of Eurovision come to pass?
Oh, I've always had a passing interest, but I think there was something about it was in 2010. A friend of mine invited me around to theirs for like a Eurovision watch party, and I thought, oh,
Yeah.
well, I'm going out that night, might as well go. And I actually really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the spectacle of it, and um, yeah, just watching how um, obviously the ones that stick out are the really the what they call the troll entries, or are the ones with the stupid performances, or
Oh, is
which
that what they call them? Troll
don't always do
entries?
very well. But was that
Is that what they call them? Troll entries? I didn't know that.
well? Yeah, sometimes they call them troll entries if they're like political with this like really humorous twist. I think
Hmm.
best example I could think from recent one was probably Croatia's one this year. It was a very
Ah,
anti-war message, but the performance was really well for me. It was I thought it was really trashy, but it
hmm.
did at least make me laugh a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And then also, so from there, kind of with the wash parties, you went a bit more down the
Yeah,
kind of the Eurovision rabbit hole. What would you say
yeah.
is like I'm trying to equate to football teams? What would you say is like your team when it comes to countries wise? Because I don't know how many people actually say UK. Let's be honest. But,
No. From the time I've been watching it, countries that have stick it, well, Sweden, obviously, because um, they're like record breakers in the show. They
yeah.
just got their seventh win, equaling Ireland's record, and statistically speaking, they have scored the most points of any country ever.
Mm,
Um, I also really liked a lot of Romania's songs, certainly in
yeah.
the early part of 2010.
Mm,
Because some of their entries like really stuck out. Um, other countries. Um, I'm just so I'm just playing
Just
back
running
through it
through
every
them.
single year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like which countries sort of come up top the most. Italy always
Mm,
does really good entries, and
yeah. I know. I always
it's
find
always
the eclectic ones for me, the ones that are a bit more outside the box work for me. Like 2 years ago, it was Finland's Blind Channel.
oh
Well,
yeah,
they were kind of new metal band, and I loved that because well, it reminded me of my teenage years growing up, and it was
yeah,
actually a really solid performance. Australia's one this year. Well, I really
yeah.
enjoyed as well. More of a kind of glam rock kind of style as well.
Hmm.
And do you find that as well that when you're talking to people about Eurovision, you find out what their kind of eclectic musical tastes are? Well, when you talk about Eurovision, if they go, "Oh, I like this country," and you're like, "Would not have thought that," but I can respect why because of their explanation. Or do you just go, "No, I know Eurovision. You're talking shite."
I'm I generally try not to take like people's musical opinion at face value because I've got such a varied music taste. Like my playlist covers all genres, so I can't really comment on like I don't know, finding out. I'm trying to think of a good example, but
Hmm.
finding out someone who like typically loves bubblegum pop also loves like death metal, that kind of
Hmm.
thing, like two completely opposite
Yeah,
music genres.
yeah, and it's something that like well, as what what well, some of my listeners won't know, but so you'll now know I do like some volunteer radio work. And a lot of people can tune into my show and have no clue what they're going to get because I could be in like an 80s rock mood, 1 week, and then I could be blasting out some 90s Britpop the next. So have you ever thought about doing something similar to that, like with a radio show kind of format? Because your taste and your range and your styles of music are very eclectic, which would work in that type of capacity.
Mm, I've thought about it, but there's times I worry, like when I'm on the radio, when I'm live on the radio, like sometimes I'm prone to get like total mental blocks on what I'm supposed to say next. So
Yeah.
I've got I have this phobia of like for most of it I'll be sitting in awkward silence for a lot of it,
Mm.
or I'll just get so awkward I'll be like I better say something and then just say something totally inappropriate or totally not relevant.
Remind me to tell you when my next one is coming up, and you will feel so much better about yourself. But because I mean, I feel the exact same way. I know like sometimes I can come off as being confident, but see when it's behind when you are behind the mic in your live, like if you take a brain fart or if you stumble over a word of something that you're doing, you're like, oh my god, what have I done? The easiest way that I found it was just to address it and make a joke out of it. Well, like I was promoting one of the girls' shows and I mixed up her last name. And I just went,
Uh-huh.
oh, come on, Andrew. She's on the night before you. Oh, really? And you listened to her last night and her stuff was good. Come on, let's roll on. Let's keep going. Well, I found me talking about things like that. I probably wouldn't even say to my therapist on here. It's just like, okay,
Yeah.
it's there. It's coming out.
Mm.
My wife in particular, she's quite raging because there's a segment that I've just came up with called "What the Wife Wants."
Uh-huh.
So like, I'll maybe go to her and be like, "Because what have you and the boys been up to this week, or what's been going on?" And she'll be like, "Oh well, they've been really liking playing with balloons lately. We've just been playing Keep You Happy with the Balloons." And then I'm like, "99 Red Balloons is going on Wednesday." Well, so
Yeah.
that segment is now like what the wife wants, and she looked at me. She's like, "They're all gonna think I'm a demon." And I'm like, "No, you're the wife. I don't give out names. I give out names when it's the nice things."
I
So
don't
it's something
remember
like that.
99 Red Balloons being demonic.
I wouldn't say so either, but
Yeah.
it's sometimes that's what happens. But it's because I always say, well, and it's things like that. You don't realize that something will come with something until it's out your mouth on air. Like I just came up with that
Yeah.
title just on the fly, and then they were like, "Oh, well, we like that actually. Keep that in." I'm like, okay, cool. So I think you maybe need to give yourself a bit more credit in that case, Ray, because you are very talented. Well, I've seen obviously you do like your stand up and stuff. Like you were fantastic, like doing the Euro specials and Ouija Warriors. So much so that I do really hope that you are coming back like every year. Was I would want to make that part of the channel a yearly thing. So
Absolutely.
I think a wee bit more credit needs to go to you, my friend. Like you do very
Um,
well. And pulling off what you pull off at the Fringe every year,
Mm.
organizing like a big variety show with lots of comedians lit through lots of different nights. The only nights that you didn't do this year, I believe, was Monday.
Yeah, Mondays
Uh,
just were my
so just
slob days.
yeah. So the rest of the time, six days a week. Throughout the
Yeah.
Fringe that you're doing it, that's no mean feat. I stress out about trying to organize one night, and that's guys just coming to my flat to play a game of poker. So yeah, I think there's a lot of skill there and a lot of good things about you that you should really back yourself more with, my friend.
Thanks.
So how are the venues with you when you come to booking the Fringe anyway?
Well, I usually do them through a group called Laughing Horse.
Ah,
So they pretty much they they they're kind of like the go-to between the performer and the venues.
ah,
So they like ask loads of venues, can we hire out your room for so much?
mm,
And then they just offer the rooms to all the performers. And what happens, you'll apply, make your preference what rooms you want and what time
mm,
slots you want. And the guys at Laughing Horse just organize through that. And most of the time you get a really good room. It just depends how many people have applied. And
mm,
obviously they have to favor a lot of the bigger name acts first, so they get top priority. And
mm.
um, but generally I get a room that I applied for.
Yeah, that's really interesting though, because I've never performed at the Fringe myself, which I tell people that, and their jaws hit the floor because they're
Mm.
like, "You've been doing something in the industry since you were 6 years old, and you're 36 now at the time of this recording. Like, how have you never performed at the Fringe?" And it's like usually a case of like, my mental health has hit the skids, my confidence has dropped, just something along those lines. So I don't know the ins and outs of doing that type of work, but you've been at the Fringe for quite a while now, like doing like your
Yeah.
stuff. And a lot of people have said that the Fringe has kind of lost its way in the sense that they're getting more and more big acts, but and lesser acts where they would go to apply their trade to get noticed are dwindling down. How do you feel about that? Because there was a big debate about that on over this year's Fringe.
Yeah. I think my biggest complaint, I'm sure a lot of other comedians have this complaint, is it's getting very expensive. It's almost like it's become a big cash cow for Edinburgh City Council
Mm,
and the landlords, because it's always the big complaint, particularly from comedians who are not based in Edinburgh, is if they want accommodation in Edinburgh for the show, they can fork up to like six, five figures sums
wow.
just for renting one place for a whole month.
Yeah.
I've heard of rooms going for, excuse me, I've heard of rooms for going like about £1,000 a night.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so I think that's the biggest complaint is um, it's one, it's just become a big cash cow, and it's also people who are like just starting out or on a sort of the or aren't quite as experienced or well known. It's difficult for
Yeah.
them to get their name out because they don't have a lot of money to pour into advertising and stuff. So
Mm,
um, the smaller acts usually end up sort of left on the heap because they couldn't
yeah.
afford to pay like big agents or big advertising agencies to
Yeah.
promote their shows. So and
Yeah. And it was one of the reasons why I tried to promote as much as I could, like with any guests that had been on the show previously during August, because I know how tough that can be and how expensive it can be. So if there was a way that I could help generate a little bit of promotion, or even if they're like, "Oh, we can't make the show, but they've been on, let's see what their style's like," when talking to them, like in interview
yeah,
settings and stuff. At least it was something that I could do to help, because I
yeah,
understand
I think
how tough that can be.
yeah, I think was it Phoebe Waller-Bridge? She organised a fund for a lot, excuse me, for a lot of the lesser known acts to basically get a bit help get a bit of funding for
Yeah,
like their fringe experience. So
yeah,
if more people can sort of group together and do that, and also if
yeah.
landlords could just stop being greedy bastards.
I think that's a general trait all round. I think at Fringe
Yep,
time they just join everybody else. I mean, I would
yep,
always hear about the different sides of it of the Fringe because my dad is a painter and decorator, and
uh,
for years he was based over in Edinburgh, like Edinburgh Way and Lothian. So anytime it got to August, like he was always in a bit of a more of a foul mood. And I'm like, And I always used to wonder why. And it was because he had to spend so much time trying not to knock over cyclists, jugglers, like magicians, like because they all just thought like, the streets are ours, let's just fire in. And he's like, I need to get to a job or I'm not going to be able to feed my family.
Yeah.
So I was always like, I'll defend my dad, the working man. And then he was like, Andrew, have you never done the Fringe? Fucking hell, Dad, I can't win.
Mhm.
It was
Yeah.
always quite
But yeah,
interesting.
crowd control. But yeah, there can be big crowds, particularly like hanging around like the bigger venues, and they
Yeah,
sort of bleed out into the smaller areas. So that
yeah,
can be a problem. Yeah, but well,
yeah.
you just got to tell it's only like 3.5 weeks of the year.
Yeah, that's the way what my dad would always say. He'd be like, it's just August, and then depending on when it would run, something's like the start bit of September just for clear up and whatnot. And he's like, it's just over a month, out of a year. What's that?
Mm-hmm.
But as we've now noticed with Edinburgh Fringe getting to the way that it's getting bigger and bigger, other comedy festivals are popping up, such as we've had Leicester, we've had Brighton, Glasgow. What ones? If you couldn't get to Edinburgh but had to have like your second option to do a run like out of the festivals you've been to, what would you say would you pick for that?
So that's um.
I know
See,
it's
I
an
haven't really.
interesting question. What
The
is
only the
sometimes
only
I
other
throw
one
them
I've
at
been
you.
to is yeah. The only other festival I've done is the Glasgow Comedy Festival, which is
Mm,
obviously a much smaller scale comedy
yeah.
festival. Um, so I've experienced of doing that, and that's good that because you don't get overworked, and um,
Mm-hmm.
as they say, you're more likely to make your money back off your promotions. So,
Yeah. And
but in
that's
terms of
the one that I've done. I've done 2 years of that, 2 years back to back.
yeah,
Jimmy gave me a shot with it, and then he gave me another one when I wasn't feeling too good. He still let me come on and do it, so I was grateful for that. So at least I could say
mhm,
Glasgow was 2-0 to Edinburgh in my book. And a
yeah,
lot of people will still look at me like scum. You've not went
yeah,
to Edinburgh yet. You've not even been to Brighton or
yeah,
Leicester. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm an Aston Villa fan. If I go to Leicester, I'll get killed.
All right.
There's a
I take
rivalry.
it Leicester City and Aston Villa are like mortal enemies.
Leicester City, Aston Villa, Birmingham City, and Wolves. They're all the Midlands football grounds.
Uh-huh.
So they're all rivalries there. So if I turned
Is it
up,
is it as bad as like Celtic and Rangers, or would you likely
no,
get stabbed?
you just get stabbed in general. I think.
Okay.
It's not as bad as Celtic and Rangers because Alex McLeish, who's the Rangers manager up here, he managed Birmingham and Aston Villa, and I went off my rocker about it.
Hmm.
But all the Birmingham fans, Villa fans were like, "Look, he's not a great manager, but why going nuts with this?" I'm like, he's just jumped to our bitter rivals, and you don't care. And I put it into the Scottish context, and we're like, "Oh, so we should be more mad about this." I'm like, no, don't do effigies or anything like Scotland do. Don't follow that route. Just be
Yeah.
silent, be silently seething like you are doing. You know his record's
Okay.
crap and just deal with it.
Mm,
But yeah, that's nothing
mm.
against actual Alex
But
McLeish, a very lovely guy. But yeah, that was
mhm.
that point. I was like, really, really. Then we got Celtic legend Paul Lambert managing us, and then he got us relegated. Well, he contributed. He contributed. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, that's more of my divergence, and it's not the point. I'm here. I want to know about you, Ray. I want to know about
Yeah.
any gigs you've got coming up that you can tell the audience about. Don't worry, the turnover will be pretty quick, so you can give recent updates like end of October, start of November, stuff like that.
All right. I'll have to disappoint. I don't have anything booked up so far.
Mm.
Although I have been known to pop into the Monkey Barrel free for all every second Monday. So um started going to that a bit more frequently to get my comedy brain working again.
Good, good.
I've been airing and umming about doing like a solo show at the Glasgow Comedy Festival this year. It's
Brilliant.
just a case of do I have enough material to like at least a whole hour show?
Yeah.
Um, but
Well, if you need a lesser known ginger comedian to make your stuff look even better by association because he's rubbish, I'm right here. Well, I wasn't going to throw Chris. I wasn't going to say Christopher John Stephen that point. He's a decent comedian. I'm like, but I'm here. It's like I make everybody look better. It's what I do. And also like to obviously promote yourself, obviously.
yeah.
But no, I hope
Yeah,
you do like do a solo show and get the material for it,
yeah.
because
Well,
well, I've seen the
I
stuff that
think
you
yeah.
do and it is good.
All right. Well, I've got to mid-November to make my decision, so
Hmm.
who knows? Watch the space.
We will. We shall watch it with bated interest, and I will give it some promotion as well. Well,
Yeah.
since we are coming up on time for the show, I'll round off with first of all asking where my audience can find you in your socials. So sell, baby, sell.
Okay. You'll find me most frequently on my Instagram at Fordyce Ray. I do have a Twitter account at Fordyce, FOUR_DICE. Although I don't really use Twitter so much these days.
Hmm.
So Instagram is probably the best one to get me on. And I do have my own Facebook page, which I haven't updated since 2000 and
Well, don't worry.
so maybe one day I'll eventually pull my finger out and get back to editing that page
Yeah.
again.
Well, the Instagram what handle will be what's shown in the video and will be in the description for this video. So we'll round
Thank you.
off with the final question that I always ask my guests. If you could give one piece of advice to anybody struggling with mental health issues at this point in time, what would that piece of advice be and why?
Right. Um, I know this is it's easy to say it than to do it, but just try not listen to the negative voices in your head. No, no, I've got my own little self-critic in my head. I call her Gretchen, and I just sometimes she just doesn't shut up.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, one of my counselors says if you personify and if you personify your self-critic and then you make her or him or them, whatever,
Hmm.
make them like look really stupid and give them like a squeaky voice, they
Yeah,
gradually start to lose their power. Um, that has worked for me occasions, so um, try that if it works.
yeah.
And I know it's difficult to get counselors and therapists just now, but if you are really struggling, like I know there's a lot of organizations out there, Breathing Space, and
Hmm.
there are
Yeah,
some counselors out there. Some of them do. I know some of them are relatively cheap. Some are even free. But just whatever help you can find. And the best thing is just don't suffer in silence.
hmm. No, good advice. And personifying like your inner critic, that's actually something that I was told as well. It was someone that I used to work with. He gave my inner critic the name James.
Mm.
And he's a Texan with a big black cowboy hat, but he's about 4'11" and has like like the really squeaky kind of American voice. So that's how
Like Cletus from The Simpsons.
yes, like Cletus. Well, a mix of Cletus and Yosemite Sam, I think.
Yeah.
Is how I've kind of personified him, and that's helped me as well. So it's just
Mhm.
as I could instantly relate to when you said that. I was like, yes, someone else
Yeah.
who has the same thing that I do. And it is tough when you're in that
Yeah.
place, like to try and reach out, and yeah, getting counselling is tough. I myself, I'm in a support group every Monday, and that's really helping me. And getting back to doing things that I love and connecting with people like
Mhm.
doing this, is getting the
Yeah.
smile back on my face again. And that also leads
Yeah.
me to say, Ray, I really do appreciate you reaching out to come on to the show. It means a lot to me, especially since will be like the kind of the final round for a while. To the series,
Okay.
but I'm so glad that you're going to come back for Ouija Warriors for Eurovision. Obviously, this
Absolutely.
slot is there. We will gladly have you back. Hopefully, we can do a little watch party for it. I can
Yeah.
come over and we'll watch it, and then you can be like, Andrew, why are you supporting with Finland again? They're not even doing death metal. Don't judge me. Finland are now
Oh,
in my yard.
yeah. I wanted Finland to win this year.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
Finland were good. There were a
Oh,
lot of good
Finland were
acts.
amazing this year. That guy was so bouncy and he got the crowd going. He was brilliant.
Yeah.
I don't get me
At
wrong,
first,
Sweden
I
were a
was
good
like,
winner as well.
yeah. At first, I was like, when I saw Finland, I was like, what the holy hell is going on here? It was like human centipede territory. But then after it kind of died down for me, that bit of when you take a little bit of a step back and then rewatch, and I was like, okay, I appreciate what they were trying to do. They really gave
Yeah.
and they really gave it a go, and it scored well with
Yeah.
the public. So I was like, who am I to judge? I was like, I'm an old
Yeah.
man in a getting older man's body, as they say.
Yeah.
Well, Ray, again, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. And until next time, my faithful followers, take care, stay safe. Bye bye.
Thanks for having me. And thank you to all the followers for listening.